What's good, folks? Welcome to another episode of the Cover One Film Room, the show that gives you the hows and the whys behind both the good and the bad of the Buffalo Bills. I'm one of your two hosts, Anthony Prohaska, joined as always by Mr. Erik Turner. And Erik, we have some Bills minicamp stuff to
Yeah.
talk about and to dive into a little bit, but that's really just the appetizer for one of your favorite positions to discuss. Arguably, I feel like maybe your
Yeah.
favorite Buffalo Bill right now because of the way he plays and the position that he plays. Got some Terrel Bernard film on deck to really be the crux and the meat of this episode, but we're more into summertime. Bills football is on the horizon. NFL football is on the horizon. How you feeling? What's going on?
Like you said, man, we're going to study some Terrel Bernard. So I'm excited, obviously. Obviously, a position I really like, as you said. And his film last year was really, really, really good. So obviously, we have a good amount of film on some of his strengths, some of his weaknesses, the good, the bad, as you said at the top of the show. So I'm excited about that. And a little bit of nuggets from camp came out this week. A lot better than the last couple weeks, right?
Yeah, a little bit more. It felt like some more action I think from an overall standpoint, from some of the coverage that's been coming out from camp. And then we obviously had I feel like we got lucky with Terrell Bernard speaking yesterday, and then Matt Milano returned, and there's some nuggets and pieces with him, which obviously heavily ties into the defense and heavily ties into Terrell Bernard and what we've seen from him. But we'll start with that mini camp piece and that mini camp aspect. And one of the I think it was yesterday, it came out. I'm all over the place in terms of dates and times, but yes, it was yesterday with Josh Allen. Some news regarding his mechanics and some of his offseason stuff, something that you and I have spoken about at length throughout the entirety of 2023, throughout the majority of, and I want to say the majority, but a good chunk of this offseason, just little nuggets and pieces here and there. We've talked about his footwork, his mechanics in general, arm slot angle, shoulders, head, all that kind of stuff. And the desire from us to see him kind of, to use your terminology, get back in the lab and kind of fix some things a little bit potentially. And he talked about that yesterday at camp, which was music to your ears and to mine as well.
Yeah, it's something that, over the course of several weeks in the film room last year, we noticed there were some minor changes. And of course, he admitted that some of the changes to his delivery and throwing motion had to do with, some minor bumps and bruises and injuries. And that's understandable, right? Your body, as you said, is going to, compensate or overcompensate at times for any type of injury. I mean, for a lot of people that run, I run pretty much every day. If you have a blister, that's going to affect how you run and your gait and little things like that, which then could in turn, again, screw up your knee or your shins. And just the smallest movement, the smallest injury can really affect how you sequence things, whether you're running or you're throwing, right? And so we've talked about it, each week in the film room when it comes to his sequencing, his rhythm. And it's something that we've studied all the way back to his time at Wyoming. And so to hear him talk about that and how he's going back to that company that maps his body and his throwing motion, that was cool to hear, because as you said, man, for months we have been saying, hey, get back in the lab, get back to paying attention to every little detail of your off season, whether that's what you eat, whether that is what you watch, whether it's playing golf one less day a week. Every little thing matters at the quarterback position. Every little inch, every little minute when you're in the gym versus not in the gym, it matters. It adds up. And so it was nice to see and hear that, again, he was back in the lab paying attention to those details.
Yeah, and I think the tweet I found it came out from Chris Brown talking about Allen refining his throwing motion with the biomechanics mapping company that he's used before to, quote, shorten his throwing motion and stride. Again, things we've talked about in this show, and it's unfortunate, I feel like, at times, because Allen is such a good football player, but there are those moments that could potentially push the Bills over the hump where he falters, and it is due to a potential mechanical issue. We talked about it again, this is such a small piece of a larger game, but that Chiefs game, that second last play on second down, he makes that throw to Shakir, and it's still almost an amazing throw, even with kind of how he positions himself. But even just a little bit, just slide a little bit, get your body right, get yourself a better platform, and maybe he makes that throw. And then who knows if the Bills take the lead there, maybe they end up winning that game. And yes, in before anybody comes in and says, well, he still had another down and Bass still missed the kick and the defense was super hurt, because we get yelled at anytime we say anything not sunshine and rainbows about
Yeah.
Josh Allen. But that's unfortunately, if you want to win a championship, if you're the Buffalo Bills and if you are Josh Allen, playing at the same time as Patrick Mahomes, in the same conference as Patrick Mahomes, in the same conference as Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert and maybe even potentially CJ Stroud now,
Right.
the AFC is loaded with good teams and good quarterback play, and it's not enough just to be good enough or athletic enough or like, yeah, he's doing pretty good. You have to be spot on as much as humanly and physically possible, because the opponents that you're going against, the teams you're going against, they don't give you a large margin for error. And sometimes one or two plays, as unfair as it is, can be the difference between advancing to the AFC Championship or advancing, to a Super Bowl versus being eliminated in the playoffs or not making them at all.
Right. And those movements, again, it can throw off the timing of a play. That inefficient movement and, slight change because of his injuries can affect the ball placement and accuracy and all those little things that come with playing quarterback, all those little things in those big moments that come up and, at times have really gone against the Bills and sometimes Josh Allen, as you said. So it's great to hear him, getting back to that again, mapping out his
Yeah.
kinematic sequencing and his throwing motion. It really was something that we've studied, and so to go back to that again, kudos to him, and hopefully it pays off because he doesn't have, again, we talked about it last few weeks. He doesn't have all these kind of guys that separate quickly, separate early.
Mhm.
So timing, accuracy, placement are going to be that much more important this season, because when those windows open up and maybe there's not as much separation as there used to be when you have Stephon Diggs one-on-one, now you have Keon Coleman or some of the other weapons, maybe there's not as much separation, but Josh has to overcome it with, again, his arm talent, his natural arm arrogance is going to be there, but he's got to do it with ball placement, especially on those in-breaking routes, those routes over the middle, those routes over the middle that are usually the second, third read over the middle, in those areas where, again, interceptions also happen. Timing, placement, accuracy, the sequencing of his throw and the throwing motion is that important.
Absolutely. And it ties in well with an aspect I've talked about a bunch this offseason in terms of like, I wanted to see the Bills go into more like less wide formations, going to more condensed
Mhm.
formations, shorter splits, and all that kind of stuff. And one of those aspects is, when you go condensed, you force defenses to have to be accurate and quick with their reads and communication, but it also can force the quarterback to be quick and efficient with his communication, or I'm sorry, with his reads, his footwork, his timing, all these pieces that you mentioned. So with how we think this offense is going to go, yes, that Josh Allen being an alien and a mutant and a unicorn is still going to be present,
Mhm.
but he's going to need to be on point given what's around him, given how we think this offense is going to run. And again, like just being off by a half a beat with your feet or a half a beat in your drop can be the difference between sequencing with that open receiver coming out of his break versus being a half second too late or a half second too early. And if those things break down, Allen has shown his ability to kind of navigate that chaos. But in a season where more may potentially be on him than before, it's nice to see him kind of going back to the lab, like you said, and work on those pieces. And another nice thing to see some of the clips coming through, you're starting to scroll through Twitter there. We saw Matt Milano getting back on the field, starting
Mhm.
to work his way back in a little bit, and got some tweets up there and some quotes from Sean McDermott, courtesy of Alex Brasky, who's been crushing it with a lot of
Yeah.
good quotes from Bernard and different pieces, really the past couple of days, but especially since mini camp hit. But what you have highlighted there is Sean McDermott talking about the injury bug, something you never like to see, and actually a
No.
few like from considering the time of year that we're in, a decent amount from a volume standpoint in terms of the injury bug, and also some notable names on there as well.
Yeah, and I would just want to start with, you talked about Milano, just the linebackers. Like there were some injury bugs that hit, as McDermott said, Dorian Williams, Ulofocio, Nicholas Morrow, Spector. And so that linebacker position took a hit, and it's early. I get it. Like it's early, but you could tell that Bean cared about that position this offseason with the different layers and avenues that he used and utilized to bring in different types of linebackers, or with the draft over the years with Williams, And obviously Morrow as a free agent, Spectre through the draft as well. So obviously linebackers matter in this system, and to see Matt Milano back, as you see here from Josh Reed, Matt Milano participating this week in a limited capacity. Him next to Bernard in this tweet from Josh Reed, that was good to see, because obviously Matt Milano is probably one of the most important players on this defense. If we're talking playmakers like we're talking tonight, and Bernard, Milano is probably the number one playmaker when healthy right now on this Bills defense, right, Ant?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of 2 all pros on this defense, along with Taron Johnson, and which actually, if you kind of just look at the Bills defense in terms of that second level, like Matt Milano, Terrel Bernard, and Taron Johnson is a really fun second level in terms of what you can do. And yeah, Milano's been one of the better players on this Bills defense for several years. His advanced metrics in 2022, his past full season, were just absolutely out of this world in terms of where he finished and what he was able to do and the difference that he made. He had the lowest QB rating when targeted amongst 80 qualifying linebackers in 2022. If you add in corners, he was 18th out of 200 qualifying players and the only linebacker in the top 25. And out of 165 players of any position defensively, he had the 5th lowest EPA per target allowed and the lowest amongst linebackers. Also had the 9th lowest total EPA against out of all players, and then for the lowest linebackers as well. Like, just an absolute monster of a season. And then when you talk about schematically, his processing, his quick trigger, the way he's able to penetrate and shoot gaps, what he can do in coverage, and then also pairing him with Terrel Bernard just from an athleticism standpoint and the ability. So much is on linebackers now that the running game is starting to matter more and come back in vogue. I feel like those second level defenders are put more into a bind now, because you still have to be responsible for the pass. You still have to be athletic enough to function in coverage against a variety of body types and skill sets. But now you have to have that ability to come forward and bang. You have to have that physicality to take on blockers, to knife through, to make tackles in and around the line of scrimmage. Or if you're Milano, make them in the backfield, cause havoc, and be that disruptor. And having him come back I think we saw what the defense looked like without him last year, and they were able to do well and get by. But he takes a defense from meh to good, and then he can take a good defense from good to great. He kind of puts them over the top, and I'm just very excited to potentially see a full season of him and his running mate, who we're focusing on tonight, Terrel Bernard, just with both how their play styles mesh. And Terrel Bernard also talked a lot today about Milano's communication and how Milano's been barking out things before Bernard can even get to it. And I think that's an aspect of Milano's game that gets lost as well.
Bernard picked up on it. Like, we're going to show some of that tonight, right? And Bernard, as soon as Milano went down, he started doing that. Like, literally, as soon as he went down, he picked up the slack and started calling out
now
plays.
You could have 2 guys doing that, because Bernard had to pick up the slack, and now you've got 2 dudes with that level of communication. So, like, what does that look like going forward? It's so exciting.
And it is exciting, because it's something that I know I hate to bring up Edmonds, but we're talking linebackers, and for the next couple of years, it's going to come up.
Psych, no Bernard film. It's just Tremaine Edmonds Bears film. That's what it is.
But it was always Milano, really, that was doing that, communicating, calling out plays, calling out keys and alignments and things he noticed on film. And Edmonds was a little younger, not quite the football player from the shoulders up that Milano is. But it's interesting to see, Bernard pick up on that, and now he's also doing it, and he's also leading in that department. With Milano, the one thing that's been kind of, to be honest with you, pissing me off the last couple of days is that I think people have forgot how good this freaking dude is. Like, I hear people talking down about him, and yeah, I get it. Like, the only thing you have is the injury bug, and he has missed some games, but you can't say he's like injury riddled when really this was like one of the longest stretches of games he's missed for injuries. But when he's on the field, do you guys not remember that Miami Dolphins game when he was taking away the first read of Tua? Do you not remember what he was doing to Tyreek Hill in the slot? I think people have just forgot how good Milano is and how he is a matchup linebacker. And one of the best in the league at doing that, matching up with guys across positions, running backs, tight ends, wide receivers. It's puzzling to me that people are fading him right now, and it pisses me off. And I understand he's working back from injury, but that's got to stop. First of all, that's got to stop. But it is fun because Bernard is picking up on that, and he's picking up where Milano, kind of left off
Mm.
last year. And you're going to see some of that stuff tonight in the film room. And it makes sense, right? And because when you talk about Bernard, like I always love when the beat reporters are in the tunnels before the games, and he get like, Josh Allen give him the thumbs up, and
Mhm.
like everyone's walking in, you're seeing what they're
Oh, I
wearing,
know
what
where
they're
this is going.
saying,
I know where it's going.
and you see Terrel Bernard every single week when they take a picture of him or when they record him. What does he have in his hands? He has his notebook and his iPad
Every time.
every
Adored
single
it.
time. And he's not like dressed to the nines, looking all fancy. He's usually in something comfortable. He's been studying the film, he's been taking notes. Like, and it shows up, man. It shows up in film. You talked about, pointing keys out and doing all those things. Like, it shows up on film. He just always seems prepared. And each and every week it shows on the film. And that's why tonight's gonna be so much fun, dude.
Yeah, just being able to really kind of reflect on the season he had that, in the moment, it sucked with Milano going down, and I don't think there's a silver lining. But if there was one, now that we're out of the 2023 season, it might be that, the kind of the trial by fire and the baptism by fire that Terrell Bernard had maybe made him a better player than he could have been if it was him and Milano, because it forced him to kind of take on more of a leadership role and a communicator role and kind of up his game to fill that void that Milano left. And yeah, just I mean, we heard about it as soon as Bernard was drafted. How Dave Aranda spoke about him, and knowing the type of defense he comes from at Baylor and what's asked of those players, and the type of NFL pro ready system that they run there. It makes for a good natural transition, and then even more so for him. So much was talked about the IQ and the understanding and the communication, and all that. And we say it every time, or at least I do every time we talk about Bernard. Leslie Frazier talking about him as a rookie, in camp, that he's one of those, classroom to grass guys or chalkboard to grass
Yeah.
guys, whatever that phrase is, but meaning he can see something on the whiteboard, learn it, and you go out and he puts it into practical physical application right there on the practice field right away. He just understands the game. He sees the game well. And that was something that with each game he played, you saw more and more. You saw him
Mhm.
beating linemen to the spot. You saw him not getting fooled by the eye candy and how offenses were dressing plays up. And you saw him being that air traffic controller and directing guys around. And he really had a very strong, second year, but really his rookie year in terms of a starter being his first year. And it's just a really exciting possibility for what he and Matt Milano and Taron Johnson, that whole second level, what they can be for this upcoming season.
And we talked about, his communication abilities and how he's always assignment sound. There's something to be said about a guy who is always around the ball. Like when Matt Milano first came into the league and he was still kind of figuring his way around the league, he just played fast, he played physical, he missed a lot of tackles, he still does, but he was always just trusting what he saw and making plays. And always in the right assignment, trusting not just his what he sees with his eyes, but also the structure and the scheme itself. And there's something to be said about that with Bernard because that dude is just always around the ball. He had 7 takeaways, and which led all linebackers last year, 3 interceptions, 4 fumble recoveries, and that type of knack and ability to just be around the ball. And it's like, okay, you see him just recover a fumble, but it's like he's right there. He's right there. If someone else, Milano's, forcing the fumble, Bernard's right there to scoop it up. Taron Johnson's forcing the fumble on the far sideline. Bernard's there to scoop it up. Like there's something to be said about that type of awareness, that type of instincts, and maybe it's just intuitive. He just knows where to be at at those moments when those things happen. But to me, that goes a long way, especially if you're talking Mike linebacker, where in this defense too, because there's a lot on their plate. Sometimes they're in the box, sometimes they're 15, 20 yards
Mhm.
downfield, covering down the field in a Tampa 2 type look. And there's just something to be said about him always being around the ball, whether it's versus the run, as a blitzer, or in coverage.
Absolutely. And I think when people see like fumble recoveries or like it deflected interceptions for DBs at times, it's always like, man, like right place at the right time, like lucky, haha. But there's something to be said for the guys who do it consistently. That means you're flowing to the ball consistently. You're reading the
Mhm.
route distribution, or you're taking good angles of the football. And with Bernard, it just seemed like if you were watching any play on defense, even if he wasn't making the tackle, it just seemed like he was always in frame, like either in that spot to pick up the
Mhm.
fumble or assist on a tackle or make the tackle, but just always kind of around the football. And it started from game one and it continued throughout the entirety of the season. And, you talked about what's asked of these Bills linebackers, which is a lot for a lot of linebackers, but especially the Bills being a nickel defense, running the type of coverages that they do and the defensive philosophy that they have. And, again, the run game is starting to come back into focus. So coming forward matters a lot. But I think when a lot of people think of linebackers or maybe even think of Terrel Bernard, they think of that pass coverage aspect, right? And like you said, being that pole runner in a Tampa 2 or matching and carrying the number 3 vertical and running with them. We saw him match up against Travis Kelce in the regular season and kind of make some throws difficult for Mahomes. One that I retweeted yesterday was the pass breakup. Oh, it was on Tampa 2. The pass breakup by Jordan Poyer on CeeDee Lamb. He runs post in the middle of the field against Tampa 2. Bernard carries him, and it makes Dak Prescott have to put more arc on the ball and allows Poyer to break and come and punch through and cause that PBU.
Yeah.
He had a strong year on tape in pass coverage, but also from a statistical perspective as well. And I think that's where a lot of the conversation starts, given the pass-heavy nature of the NFL.
What's so amazing about what Bernard does is, again, he doesn't have the best physical measurables, but boy, he trusts his eyes. As I said, his processing is some of the best when you're watching, especially if we're talking versus the run. The Bills play that one gap up the field mentality type defense. And what teams and offenses try to do is eye candy, lots of movement, pre-snap shifting, motion, snapping on motion, split flow after the ball snapped. You're seeing
everything the Miami Dolphins do, basically.
Yes, basically everything Miami does, and anyone from that scheme does prior to the snap, really is geared towards these one gap defenses, because one gap defenses, hey, this guy has one gap, and so you have to do some things to change gaps, change assignments, create movement, create confusion. And so you see a lot of that versus the Bills defense, and his eyes never waver. He, when those shifts happen, when those motions happen, you see him bumping over his gap. Post snap, if a guy tight end's coming across the formation on the sift block, he immediately, calls that back, calling, like the gap shifts, and he makes a play. And that allows him, that processing, that stuff from the shoulders up really allows him to play faster than, again, his physical measurables. And so he's always a step ahead of a block. I don't want to say always. That's obviously absolute. More times than not, he is a step ahead of a block. He's beating a blocker to a spot. And so and then on top of it, he knows which guy he has to beat because he understands blocking concepts. If it's a power run, he understands that the guard and tackle are working a combination block to him, and he can do different things to avoid the block. And so he's just so much fun to watch from that. You're going to see a ton of that on film tonight, especially if we're talking against the run.
Yeah, absolutely. And he has to play that way sometimes just from a survival aspect because he is a smaller frame type dude. And you talk about the physical limitations. It's sometimes, just from a physical play style standpoint, but also from a size standpoint. I remember you and I joking at Bill's training camp last year that him and Taylor Rapp looked like the same size dude.
Yeah, when he was standing with the DBs, we're like, hold on, that's Bernard?
Yeah, he was like, did him and Rapp switch jerseys? He's not a big dude. And so he's not built to fully take on a pulling guard square or, take on this climbing offensive lineman. He beats that and overcomes that and mitigates some of those frame or question marks from his game by being efficient in his processing, by being quick, by being accurate. Like you said, beating those guys to the spot. He does it so often, beating climbing linemen and getting around them and beating them to that spot, not allowing dudes to just hit him flush. And sometimes it'll happen and he'll get wiped out because he's like 220 pounds soaking wet. But more often than not, like you said, his ability to beat those guys in that aspect. And yeah, just really an overall strong game. And even just to highlight some of the stats that, Chris put together from a pass coverage aspect. 11th most coverage snaps amongst linebackers last year. He led all linebackers in points saved. He was second in points saved versus tight ends amongst all defenders, not just linebackers. He had the 11th lowest passer rating against amongst linebackers with 200 plus coverage snaps. And then another aspect, Erik, that you and I talked about a ton when we broke down his tape coming out of Baylor, how he can be used as a blitzer, how functional he is coming forward in that regard as well. And he had some good pass rush stats and good pass rush tape as well.
Yeah, we're gonna highlight a couple of those plays from last year's too, and a lot of it has to do with his timing and rhythm and reading. Again, who's in front of him? That's the thing that stands out with him. Whether we're talking as a pass rusher or versus the run, it's something that's not talked about a lot of when we're talking about linebackers, and that's anticipation and ability to read not just where the ball's going, what direction, and that flow of the play, but erase some of the mistakes that may happen in front of him from a defensive tackle who gets bumped out of his gap, and he has to make that D tackle right or overcome that, or else obviously a one gap defense is destroyed. So that's not talked about enough when we're looking at and talking about linebackers and breaking down their film, because it allows him to, again, still play fast, make everyone in front of him, right, whether they're right or actually wrong. And he does a great job of sensing, those things unfolding and happening, but also staying a step ahead and anticipating or sensing a cutback from a running back. And he's there in the hole to make the tackle when the offense thought they had the upper hand because they got that first level out of their gaps.
That's a really good point, and that's something that I don't think it's talked about enough. And how many times do we go through that in season, like showing a play, and someone's like, "Oh, like Timmy was in the wrong gap," and it's like, no, he had to be in that gap because
Mhm.
so and so in front of him got bumped, and if Timmy stayed in his original gap, you'd have two guys in the same gap, and that's no good for anybody. And that's a hard thing to do because think about it. Most of these plays are short and quick, and you have to make this instantaneous snap decision in about half a second mentally and then execute it physically. So much of his game is just tied to that processing, that anticipation, that high functional football IQ that goes back to his days at Baylor that he showed immediately as soon as he stepped on campus in Buffalo, and continues to be a strong anchor point in his game now that he's a starter for this defense.
All right, let's go have some fun. Let's jump into the film. This kind of ties in perfectly, that anticipation and reading what's happening in front of him. You see the safety drop down into the box, and Bernard once again just reads the play. So watch what happens here on the snap, and you're gonna see how you're gonna get Milano kind of covered up. You're gonna see Jones kind of shoot up field. You have a lead blocker right here. No one is blocking him. Watch him just go get it. He shoots up the field and goes and makes the tackle again. Not necessarily that Daquan's wrong here, but look at how wide he gets. He gets wide up here and up the field. So now you need a replacement. Obviously, covered up here, one-on-one here. He realizes, well, guess what? I can't just play into this gap now. I have to go and play off of Daquan Jones, make him right. And he does by making the tackle in the backfield.
And I feel like this seems so simple when we break it down, but this is an aspect I think, not to throw shade on Tremaine Edmonds because apparently we're the only people who ever praised him, but this was an aspect that Tremaine sometimes would struggle in, like not kind of fitting this aspect. And there you go,
Right.
highlighting those gaps for everybody right now. So you
Yeah.
see, who is that in front of Bernard? Ed Oliver? I'm
Oliver.
assuming?
Yep.
Oliver. So Oliver's in front of Bernard there, and he's in the B gap. Bernard is then responsible for that A gap to the left of the center. Well, the right of the center, but from our vantage point, the left. Daquan is in the right side A gap, and then Milano has that B gap to the outside shoulder of the left guard there. And you can see what everyone's initial assignment is. And then you highlighted it. Bang. What happens on the snap? Look where Daquan Jones gets pushed. He gets pushed into Terrel Bernard's gap. So Bernard reads it, paces it. And I also like, too, you can see his head up reading it the entire time. And the way he almost kind of shuffle steps into the
Yeah.
hole, it's
Scallops right in there. Right.
yes,
Beautiful.
there's a sense of urgency and pace, but it's also under control. He's not just flying and running around like a chicken with his head cut off. There's that controlled chaos and purpose to what he's doing with his urgency and the movements, and he's able to execute and just close down and make the tackle. But it's a nice fill off of the movement that happens up front, like we talked about.
Same type of thing, processing not just where the ball's going, but also what's happening in front of him on the snap. Once again, watch the defensive tackle in front of him. You see him kind of get washed, right? Initially get washed into this gap, but then you see his helmet get back over here, which then now, again, Bernard was coming downhill immediately. Why? Because again, on the snap, you see the D tackle get bumped. You see him get bumped over here. So now Bernard's coming right here. Well, guess what happens? That D tackle works across the face. So what does Bernard have to do? He has to make him right. Look at him play over the top, sense that cutback, and go make the tackle.
He almost reads it like he's the running back and like
Yeah,
his own
right.
defensive tackle. Yeah, and like his own defensive tackle is the defender. So all of a sudden you see that flash of color in the hole, put your foot in the ground and go to the spot where the defender isn't. And it's just such a nice play coming downhill, again, making this play instantaneously, reading the track of the running back, but more importantly, reading what Tim Settle is doing. And good on Settle, working front side, getting back across face. But that could ironically work against Bernard if he's not reading this, because like you said, where he's set up right now is to come downhill in this hole, especially based off of Settle's initial placement. This could be one of those spots where it becomes a dream for a team like Miami, where you have two dudes in one gap,
Mhm.
things are getting washed over the top, and now the running back's able to make a cut, get north and south, and get
Yep.
upfield. But instead, Bernard erases that by reading it, reading his man, and making
So
the
pretty,
tackle at
man.
the line.
It's
So
it's
nice.
it's amazing. Again, it's almost like he's just doing it naturally, right? Like he just
Mhm.
knows that cutback is coming. T Dab says, my only concern is our linebacker room's health, which yeah, we talked about that early. Their play is awesome. Smaller, lighted guys seem to take a beating over the course of the season. It's true, and I think that's why they probably why they loaded up with all different types of linebackers this year.
Yeah, adding like 75 different linebackers in a variety of ways.
Right, and here's another play again. Now it's Ed Oliver. Watch Ed Oliver and what gap he's in initially. Watch him get bumped into and fed to this guy right here, into this gap. So now again, you're seeing Bernard. Okay, I'm just gonna fill right here. Here comes the other linebacker downhill. And so then watch what happens as the running back approaches the line of scrimmage. Ed Oliver gets his head back into his gap, forcing this cutback. Look at Bernard and how he shaves the angle here on the block by 74. Look him undercut that, get into the line of scrimmage. He's able to avoid that block and make the tackle right near the line of scrimmage.
That's shades of kind of like that Matt Milano play style, where he's
Mhm.
able to get forward and he's able to
Free
dip.
style. Yes.
Yep, be able to dip and bend and knife around dudes. And again, this is, some of what we talked about earlier. Like this type of movement and play is essential to Bernard because he doesn't want to get caught, really in a true one-on-one aspect against a climbing offensive
No,
lineman, but he's able to
especially a
beat them.
tackle. No,
No,
Cam is
definitely
that
not.
Cam Robinson? No way.
Yeah, you're not gonna be able to handle that type of grip strength, that type of length. And then if it's in versus an interior guy, shorter arms, cool, less length, but probably more power and more compact. And again, Bernard is not built to live in that style, but he's able to get there because of his anticipation and
Yeah.
his quickness. And you highlight Bernard's track again, flash of color from his defensive lineman in the hole in front of him. So Bernard reads it, beats that block, makes that cut, and there he is in the hole to make the tackle. Again, making his teammate right, making sure all gaps are accounted for, not necessarily because that was the plan initially, but sometimes your opponent, they get paid to play football too, and they're good at it, and they change your plan. You have to be able to adjust and course correct in the moment, and Bernard is able to.
And one thing that, Edmonds kind of struggled with over the years is when there were moving gaps, especially if you have like
Mm,
two pullers. And again, when you take a backside guard and pull him to the front side of a play, you're inserting or adding a gap to the play side, like you see here, the Jags do here. And what that does is it changes assignments. And right here, it looks like the Bills may be outflanked. Everyone's kind of getting washed down right here. You're getting that puller for the edge defender. But watch Bernard read this. He's so good at doing it and working over the top of traffic and making the tackle versus these gap runs. This is not easy. Again, he's got to read, initial counter action right here. So he's reading the running back and then flow the play, obviously going out this way. He's seeing a pulling guard come across. So he understands that it is coming to the right side of the defense. But now you see him look out in front. Okay, what type of traffic is out there? Who do I need to avoid to go make that tackle? You see him stay clean and he goes and makes the tackle. And this is the type of play where they had someone accounting for Bernard, but he beat him to the spot right here. He beat that, I think it's a tight end right there, to the
mhm.
spot, worked over the top so quickly to go make the tackle on the running back.
Yeah, you see him go by the tight end, and the tight end is like looking around, like, "Uh-oh, like who do I pick up now? Because there goes my man." This whole play, like you talked about, that counter action, like it's designed to catch you leaning one way, and then when you try to go back the other, you're out leveraged, you're pinned, you got nowhere to go. But he reads it so well, and I like to think here that he reads the track of ETN. And because you can see where his eyes are right now, he
Yeah.
sees that flash of color and he's looking directly in on Trevor Lawrence. And as that play goes forward, he sees the guard crossing in front of him and he's got his eyes between the guard and on ETN, and he can see ETN's path, ETN's track, and where he's going. And he just beats him right to that spot, meets him in the hole. And by playing it that way and getting over the top, he avoids that block, like you said. And again, this play is designed to get him caught in the wash and caught in that trap a little bit. So there's nobody in that hole. And he stays above it because of his processing and his football IQ, and it leads him right to the ball.
It's just so pretty. His processing, man, just is
So
is
good.
money. Watch his play again. Look at the movement. Here, it's the Dolphins. Look at the movement, the formation, the change of direction, and what they're trying to do to him. and they're trying. Remember, you remember this game? They were running this
Yep.
pitch out to Achan
They've
and all their
they've
running backs.
killed teams with this coming into this game. Like Achan was leading the league in EPA on the ground, EPA per attempt. They were killing
Yeah.
dudes on the edge with their crack toss and wide zone toss stuff. So this is just built into the tendency, and then trying to flip teams with it.
You're seeing this wide receiver exit out and then motion, but then you're also getting, again, flow back this way, and that's adding a gap to this side of the defense. But watch Bernard. And so they're expecting him to fast flow right here, kind of go this way. Everyone kind of flow this way so you can get a good angle, block on him, and then you have the running back kind of cut it back. But watch this read and reaction by Bernard on this play. Immediately cuts back, stays over the top of Eichenberg, and goes and makes the tackle on this play. This type of reaction and processing is just uncanny. This is something he had to have seen on film, and it's so pretty. I have to slow it down. Watch as Eichenberg goes to scoop to that next level. Watch the little arm over right there, and he smacks that left hand down of the offensive lineman and goes and makes a tackle near the line of scrimmage. Just pretty stuff from Bernard.
So fluid, so smooth, but also good, placement with that hand just to chop the inside arm down to Eichenberg and make the play. And there's so much opportunity for Miami to succeed on this play because of the speed of Achan. Like McDaniel schemes his dudes like Hill and Waddle and Achan and everybody that has any ounce of speed. He schemes them so well, and there's so little room for error for the defense because dudes like that are so fast. So all Miami wants, like all McDaniel wants, is a quarter of a second of hesitation from you, and you're probably going to get caught out. So there is so little and room for error and margin for error. And you highlighted Daquan Jones's track there. Look how he just gets that penetration, gets cross face of the left guard, gets into the backfield and starts to blow it up. Bernard reads that and then gets over the top, like he said, and gets past Eichenberg and fills then behind Daquan Jones and refits into that gap, so there's nowhere to go. So it starts up front. Even shout out to Ed Oliver, too, for kind of, creating some havoc there as well. But this is another example of not only just reading it and the processing, but also processing what his partners are doing on this defense and seeing what Daquan Jones is doing and then realizing, okay, this dude is in that spot. Let me get back to this other spot and make sure there's nowhere for Achan to go.
Here's, again, motion prior to the snap. Another gap run. Left guard is pulling this time. Look at the movement at the second level for the Bills. And then, again, just IDing who, the concept, the run blocking, but also who he needs to beat. Here comes Waller from outside. They're letting Rousseau go so he can be kicked out and kind of create this little alleyway right there. But watch Bernard beat Waller to the spot. Avoid this, the slightest dip right there with his left shoulder, avoids the long arms of Waller, and gets right in the gap to meet Barkley. Just pretty stuff versus these gap runs. And again, the Bills see a lot of gap runs because of the style of defense they played, that one gap scheme. And so teams and offenses try to add gaps and try to make you process, well through the snap of the ball. And you see Bernard time and time again make these plays at or near the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, teams are trying to catch the Bills, get enough field, and trying to take advantage of their one gap style and that quickness and that penetration. And if I think this, and correct me if I'm wrong, isn't this also the same run? Like the Giants had a big gain on this type of run, like earlier in the game, and Bernard or somebody got caught out at the second level by Waller, and the Giants went to it again. Bernard recognized it. Yep, changed his angle and beat Waller to the spot. So this is another example, not just of his processing overall, but him recognizing, wait a minute, they just got us on this run. They might have even been on the same drive or on the previous drive. Him recognizing it and saying, they just got us on this. This is what I need to do differently. And he puts that adjustment into action and then bangs Barkley in the hole.
All right, here's another play. You're seeing that processing and his ability to shave angles. Look at him meet this lead blocker in the hole and then avoid that block. Kind of, again, dip that shoulder. He's so good at it. He's with his size and his short arms, he's not going to be a guy that's a stack and shed type linebacker. So he's got to do things from the shoulders up to put him ahead of the scheme and ahead of the offense, but also to avoid blocks and evade blocks. That is one way a linebacker can win versus blockers, so especially if we're talking one-on-one situation. Look at the little sidestep and dip of that shoulder to go make the tackle on the running back.
And it's a good play, like to kind of set up that move against that tight end who's trying to fit him up. Like you see the way Bernard
Same type
plays
of play
it,
too, right? So you got the pulling guard, and then this guy, instead of going across the formation, they actually change it up and have him lead inside.
Man, McDaniels does so much cool stuff. Like it's just like, oh man, like I just sometimes focus on. I'm like, oh wow, it's nice, and then I forget that I'm supposed to hate him and not supposed to like anything he does. I like how Bernard almost kind of like treats the tight end like almost like Bernard is like a matador and the tight end's a bull. And like he's just sitting there thinking like, okay, I'm going to take you head on. And then right at that last minute, like you said, dips that shoulder. So he changes his surface area. So that way he's not meeting that tight end square up on square. He changes that surface area by dipping that shoulder, reduces how much body that tight end is able to get a piece of him with. And then because Bernard has the lower center of gravity and the physicality and the strength, he's able to play through that shoulder. And also watching him read the track of the running back is partially why he does it too. Like he has his responsibility, keeps this run inside, plays through that outside shoulder, and then goes through and makes a nice physical tackle. Like it's just such a nice setup and reactionary movement. And again, playing to his size and frame and mitigating areas where he could be at a disadvantage.
Another gap type run here against the Jets. This time he splits two blockers. So once again, you see these guys kind of working to the next level, and then you're going to even see the tight end kind of just avoid the block there and go and try to get Bernard. And Bernard splits both of them. You see him take them on with really good technique and nice rip through, and he's there in the hole to help to make the tackle on the running back again.
Yeah, they arc the tight end there. I think that's CJ Uzama. They arc the tight end, leave Floyd there and try to kick him out and then get the tight end up on that second level on Bernard. And exactly like you said, like he reads this flow, he sees what's coming. You've got that other pulling tight end,
Yep.
leading and coming through that hole. And Bernard is right there to just kind of gum up the works by pinballing between the climbing offensive lineman and that tight end who's arcing around and trying to get him. It's just, again, a nice physical, heady, efficient, urgent play. You also see him kind of giving that communication beforehand and calling pieces out in terms of what he was
Yeah.
already looking for there.
Just look at his helmet, look at his eyes as the ball snapped. Again, right after that communication piece, look at him, look at that guard coming across the formation, and then you see Brees Hall as well, kind of coming across formation like a counter trade type look. And again, he just beats the guys to the spot, man. He beats those blockers to the spot where they're trying to aim for to pick him up, and just makes the tackle again. His ability to do that on a consistent basis is just phenomenal. And you see a similar type play here. He's
Mm.
kind of more of a backside linebacker here versus the Commanders, but you're getting that same type of action, guard pulling backside Y or tight end coming across the formation. Look at them. Look at him key. Look at a key block, right? He's keying this back block and the puller. Those are the type of triangle keys you're looking when you're trying to stop the run. And this is your triangle right here. And you're going to see him immediately just scrape and call the back call, because again, they're adding two gaps now to the right side of the offensive line, the defensive's left side. And so you don't see him just go, full throttle this way. You see him call back, back, back. That lets Milano know he needs to get over a gap. But he waits right here. He kind of sits in that gap until that running back bypasses that gap. And then once he gets outside this combination block, he then works over the top and he's able to make the tackle with his teammates right at the line of scrimmage. I mean, Taron Johnson too. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, what was that? He just comes out of nowhere off the left side of the screen, kind of pressuring that backside run, not giving a cut back there, but just great run defense, especially from Bernard.
And Bernard, I feel like helps Terran with that a little bit by initially slow playing it. He gives Terran that opportunity to kind of hit that gap and penetrate. You see Milano calling out that H back on that
Mhm.
side, who is one of those pullers along with that left guard. Again, another gap run, like we continue to highlight as teams like to do when they attack the Bills. And you kind of get that flow, almost similar to kind of like a counter, and where that front side is trying to wash everybody down or climb to the top, and you get this gap scheme with a left guard coming through as that kick out block and the tight end leading through and trying to climb. But Bernard's able to close this down by slow playing it. And you see
Oof. A
that quick
lateral
little
agility
wave.
there.
Yep, the
Yeah.
lateral agility, the quick arm motion to call out like that back call. And then just look at how almost like he's stalking Brian Robinson. He's in that initial gap. Okay, and Kate, are you going to bang this in here? No, you're not. I'm going to flow over the top and make that stick right there. And he gets around the two climbing linemen who are occupied with Jordan Phillips, and he's able to stay clean. I think that's an aspect of his game too, right? The ability to kind of wade through the traffic and not get caught up in anything and be able to maintain his eyes on the running back, on the path of the football, and be able to make those plays and sort through things.
Yeah, and so just a few clips of maybe some things that kind of stood out that were negatives. I mean, for one, I think his missed tackles are worrisome. But I do
Mhm.
think some of that is a scheme. I do think that what the Bills do, being in nickel, the third most in the NFL, and having lighter linebackers, having Taron Johnson play almost like a third linebacker. I think all of those things, are factors to him missing a lot of tackles. I think again the philosophy of being up the field, playing fast, creating
Mhm.
that chaos and those tackle for losses. I think, all of that are factors into why he missed 27 tackles last year, according to PFF. That's a 15.6 missed tackle rate in 2023. So that's not good, but it's not just a scheme. Sometimes, as you'll see in some of this film, his pads are a little high, his feet will stall, and guys will kind of just accelerate away from him. But, the short arms, he's not going to have, because of the short arms, he's not going to have a really
Mhm.
wide wingspan or tackle radius. And so he does miss some tackles from time to time.
Yeah, and like you said, it's kind of been symptomatic of this defense the past couple of years. But you add the size and the frame, and it goes back to that conversation piece that we're having around him, where he's got to play with good anticipation and good processing, because he can't afford to get caught out in certain situations because he doesn't have the frame or the overall size or speed or feet to kind of course correct and overcome those pieces. And you see here on this one, he kind of plays a little too fast over the top and on the sideline against the tight end. And then because he isn't the biggest or the thickest type dude and doesn't have the longest arms, the tight end's able to kind of just play him into a shoulder tackle situation and just
Mhm.
shrug him off. And Bernard kind of just crumples to the ground.
And the other thing that comes up, aside from the missed tackles, are his stop and go ability. He plays fast, there's no doubt about it, but he
Mhm.
struggles getting back up the speed. That stop and go isn't quite there. Along with that kind of like, I don't know, long distance range. You see him have to show off some range here. He's at full speed now, and then Kelsey cuts it back. And he's not in a good tackling position, kind of lunges, and that tight end once again is able to kind of slip off of that tackle down the field.
Yeah, despite being a guy who he's not unathletic, and despite having a really good RAS score, that stop and start ability is something that you kind of worry about at times, and you see it like rear its ugly head. Like he's athletic, but he's not necessarily the most fleet of foot, and he can get into these spots like we showed there against the Chiefs, where he's caught lunging and trying to make a play rather than letting his feet kind of bring him to that spot because he got caught out.
And here's coming that like stop and go,
Hmm.
stop start ability here. So there's a couple of these plays where guys, he was dropping to his zone, and then running backs were leaking out, and he's right there to make the tackle. His feet stop, and that running back is able to accelerate quicker than Bernard is, and so he's not in a good tackling position. And that running back from time to time would make him miss, like you see here against Denver.
And then you add that in with, again, not having the longest arms and not
Mhm.
being the biggest dude. So if he only gets an arm on somebody, it's got to be pinpoint in order to trip somebody up, because he's not built to be making arm tackles or just, beating guys with the shoulder. He's kind of got to square dudes up and get as much of his frame on a guy as he can, because he has those shorter arms and because he's not the biggest or the thickest dude there.
Yeah, here's another one. ETN against the Jags. You're going to see him kind of accelerate and get an explosive play on a simple check down. And again, this is going to be charged to Bernard, but you can see he's dropping to his zone. But when he comes up to make the tackle, his feet stall. Now you're getting in. Obviously, ETN is a hell of an athlete, and he's got some burst and acceleration. He's able to accelerate away from Bernard, because Bernard is, in almost like a standstill position. Now you get an arm tackle and easy, evasion of the tackle there from the running back.
I wanted to address something real quick that was in the
Yeah.
comments. Jay Will came and said Milano is overrated, still yet to play a full season and loses playoff games. Way, way overrated. Our linebackers need an upgrade. I wanted to just pull this real quick because I had it for our conversation earlier, but just didn't speak to it. Matt Milano, games played. So his first year was 2017. Games played 16, 13, 15, 10, 16, 15, and then 5 last year. So he's played a very significant amount of snaps. The injuries that he's had have been freak, kind of broken leg, weird type things that are going to happen to anybody. Similar to, the people who wanted to say like Tank Dell getting hurt last year were like, oh, see, it's because he's
Yeah.
small. It's like, no, he got caught in a situation where anybody's leg is going to break. Erik, I know you disagree with this notion, especially how you talked about him
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
I just don't see how a Bills linebacker core is overrated or needs an upgrade considering the year that Bernard had and considering that Matt Milano is an all-pro the last full season that he played.
Yeah, I just don't get it. I mean, I don't have much energy to add anything to that
I
because
just wanted to bring it up because of how you spoke.
turn on the film. Just turn on the film. Overrated. What are you talking about? Look at people that cover the league and when they scout the Bills week in and week out, who's the guy that stands out on said film? It's Matt Milano. Knock it off. Go somewhere with that. I want to hear it. Oh my goodness, that's
Sorry.
crazy. Oh, overrated. All right. So Laura says, I don't like showing the missed tackles, blasphemy. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. We'll get out of there. Let's move on to some more positives. We again stop and start ability. That's kind of lacking a little bit. It leads to some missed tackles, and in the missed tackles, obviously, that's a pretty high percentage. But again, a lot of that has to do with the scheme, on top of some of the traits that he kind of lacks, or some of the physical measurables that he lacks. But with that said, one of his strengths, all the way back to when we studied him coming out of Baylor, was his ability to rush the passer. And we saw that a bunch this year. Here's one of the plays versus Chargers. And the Bills are, mugging those A gaps, and watch the twist here between the linebackers, and Bernard gets mashed up versus the running back. But I want you to watch the technique he uses on that running back. The running back does a good job of meeting him at the line of scrimmage, but he just swims that guy and goes and makes a tackle on the quarterback. His timing of pass rushes, his anticipation is phenomenal. And the other thing that stood out with him, it was when he was a green dog type rusher, where he had the running back, and if the running back stayed in, he could add on. Like that type of ability, that processing was so quick, and understanding, oh, that guy he's not going out into a pass route. He's actually just staying in. I can go and add on as a rusher for the blitz. Like that also stood out when we're talking Bernard's ability as a pass rusher.
1000%. And again, like you talked about, it's an aspect we broke down with him coming out of Baylor. Like his angles to the quarterback, his timing on blitzes, how tight he stays if he's a looper, or how physical and disruptive he is if he's a spiker. Like he's so good coming forward in that regard. And you highlight Terrell Dodson's track here. He goes right at that center, and look how tight Bernard stays off of Tyrell Dodson. There's no space. There's no inefficiency in the movement. And then, like you said, Eckler comes up to meet him. He just stays over the top and quickly rips right through and maintains his pass and his pace to close down on Easton Stick and get this sack. And again, we saw this consistently from him. And we talked about when Tremaine Edmonds left, and we felt like Terrel Bernard was going to be the starter. We talked about how this defense, for as much maligned as Edmonds was, whoever replaced him, you couldn't ask them to play linebacker in the same way that Edmonds did because of, for again, as much maligned as he was, Edmonds was a unicorn in a lot of ways physically. I like how McDermott led with more of that blitzing button for Bernard, especially when Milano was healthy. We saw more creepers and Sims and 5-man pressures that worked, but overall just letting Bernard come forward and play with physicality as a blitzer, or even like on this one here where he just absolutely sticks the hell out of the tight end and buries him in the backfield.
Right. And keep in mind, this is quick game. This is probably more of an RPO, but you see them once again keying that off the line tight end there. But I just love how fast and physical he is on this play. So you're getting that flow, and they're making it look like they're going to insert right here and run just right up the middle, almost like an ISO, type run out of shotgun. And so you see that that's adding a gap right in the middle. It's almost like a full block with an offensive lineman. So you see him trigger downhill, and he meets that guy with physicality, as you said, meets him with physicality. Obviously, the quarterback pulls it. He's looking to pass, and watch Bernard. Okay, so he disposes Cole Turner there, and then he's trying to find the ball. Okay, Gibson doesn't have it. You see him peek right at the running back, and it's like, okay. I think when we did this during the year in the film room, I said, this is the look that the bad guy, the villain, in the horror movie that, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is. And, here's Jessica Biel, probably running upstairs. This is the look that he has for the quarterback here. And once he finds out that quarterback has the ball, he goes and gets him. Like, this is a nightmare type scenario for a quarterback. Quick game doesn't work out. RPO doesn't work out. Bernard's just throwing people around and processing everything unfolding in front of him, including going and getting that quarterback for the sack.
I just love all the awareness and the recognition combined with the physicality. Like you said, like I don't have too much to add. I just think it's ridiculous that he comes and reads this play as if it's, again, going to be a straight regular handoff and a run to Gibson and just buries the tight end. But then to have the wherewithal to detonate on the tight end, immediately get your eyes to the running back, realize he doesn't have the ball, realize the ball still must be with the QB, get your eyes on the QB, and then create that path and get to the QB and make the tackle. Like,
Yeah.
he single-handedly wrecks this play in almost 3 different ways. And again, to do all that, we're showing it in slow motion, it's impressive. But like, playing in real time, just watch how bang bang everything is. Like, detonates on the tight end, reads the running back, sees Howell has it, makes the play on Howell. Like, all of this being done in under 3 seconds is ridiculous.
It's amazing, dude. It's so much fun to watch. So that, those were a few of the clips from him as a pass rusher. But let's move on to, kind of coverage and how and why he's such a great fit in the Bills zone heavy scheme here. And that's his ability to space routes. It's something he did really well in Dave Aranda's scheme at Baylor. And so here is a play from the Steelers game. And once again, I want you to watch how they're trying to use him. So you see the Bills go ahead and, switch out post snap into an inverted Tampa 2 coverage. So now he's kind of like that hook to curl defender, not that deep hold defender like he usually is. But watch how they're trying to bait him. The Steelers want him to drive on this so they can sneak this guy into the hole right here as that corner is sitting low. That's what they want to happen here. But watch Bernard wait the quarterback out and space it perfectly. Spaces it perfectly, and he's able to get a piece of the ball so that it's not able to make it to that option in that high-low, in that area between the numbers and the hash.
I love anytime they do this coverage. Just as an aside, this whole, like, what I know we call it different things, but like I always call it like that Tampa 2 robber. I love it. And Taron Johnson is the split field safety. I just love this pre-snap look and what they shift to, with Hyde being that hole player or that robber. And if anybody goes vertical, he ends up carrying him and being that pole runner, technically as the middle third player. Taron Johnson in the slot, dropping as that, split field safety. I hope for more of that this year. But like you said, highlighting Bernard in that as aspect. Yeah, like understanding that route distribution, understanding his relation to the coverage. He does not get sucked in. And also too, like the down and distance, it's third down. He's already at the sticks and he knows that defender in front of him is in front of him by like 3 or 4 yards. So if he catches it, cool. I come forward and I make the tackle. I've got support around me. I don't need to come up and jump on this sit route. I can just sit and be where I am. And then he sees that ball get thrown up. He's able to get a hand up and get a deflection, but it all starts because of that initial placing, understanding the down and distance and his responsibility, and it leads to an incompletion and a stop on third down.
Yeah, you guys are crazy. Walter says, I don't think Milano is overrated, but I feel his impact on linebacker as a position in general is over exaggerated a bit. Nah, stop that, man. Like, come on. Are you kidding me? Like, he's literally a top 5 linebacker in the league. You're trying to use positional value as a reason to say Matt Milano isn't one of the best linebackers in the league. Like, stop.
Well, he's saying because the Bills have had elite linebacker play for 7 years and it's never made a difference in the postseason.
Please, the whole defense is based in the linebackers. Like, what are you even talking about? The playmakers are at the linebacker level, man. It's just.
I think a lot of people too are still upset that Milano got beat by Travis Kelce in OT in the 13 seconds game. So that means that he can't cover. Like I've seen that comment. So at least anytime I show any Matt Milano clip, even going back to last year, there's always at least 2 or 3 people that are like, can't cover Kelce in the playoffs though. And it's like, all right, like just what are we doing?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, we've had elite linebacker play, but it's overrated. What do you mean? So you'd rather have worse linebacker play? Like, what do you mean? Oh my God. All right. Back to the film. Awareness. Pass breakup here. Once again, kind of the similar type route concept. And, we talk about that elite linebacker play over the years. One thing that we saw happen when the Bills played some of their Tampa 2 or cover 2, more so than Tampa 2, and quarters looks, is you saw a lot of these bender routes kind of get to the middle of the field and access the middle of the field because the linebacker will kind of hang here instead of feeling or sensing this going over the middle. Well, Bernard is very good at sensing this. Again, he's not jumping this route. You see Taron kind of take that, and you'll see the route kind of go and sneak behind him by Godwin, but watch Bernard sense it, drift, and then close down the middle of the field. Again, not the biggest, the best measurables, but that awareness and it shows up in the run game. It shows up in the pass game, and he understands route combinations and how offenses want to attack these type of looks where the middle of the field is wide open. You see Poyer playing out here. It's wide open. He senses that bender route coming in behind him, and he's able to make a play on the ball.
And again, like the previous clip, it's a third down. He drops. He knows where he is in relation to the sticks. He sees the routes developing in front of him and knows, okay, I don't have to nail down on this underneath route in front of me because it's 5 yards short of the first down. If he catches it, cool, I can come up and make a play. And to your point, I always remember too, like being taught in coverage, like if you know, two is going out, one is coming in, or vice versa. And you see that sit route from the underneath receiver. And so Bernard knows and anticipates, probably sees it a little bit with his peripherals too. He knows somebody's coming behind him. And you can see that little peek when he looks to the left a little bit. He's seeing that flash of color and he moves and he shuffles with it. He goes to that vulnerable open space in the middle of the field, and it works with where he's placed himself, the down and distance. Again, all a very heady play because he understands the situations, the route distribution, and his placement in relation to all of that on the field. And it allows him to make a play and a stop on third down.
And now you kind of see all of the traits that we talked about tonight come together in this interception against the Commanders. The Commanders do a bunch and throw a bunch at him here, but he once again spaces it and reads it beautifully. So watch initially, you see there's a trips set over here to the bottom of the screen, and watch how they go ahead and release. So you get two verticals up the field, and they want him to carry this a little bit, but you see him once again be patient and watch the eyes of the quarterback. It's third and double sticks here. I mean, you can see, yes. So you can see him space it beautifully. Once again, kind of hanging near this marker right here and watching the quarterback all at the same time. So he, again, is patient. You see the quarterback hitting the top of the drop, getting ready to throw it. And here comes that dagger route right here by number 2 across the middle. There's a clear out. He senses that once again, quarterback is starting his delivery. What does Bernard do? He drifts back. He gains depth, almost baits the quarterback into that throw. And that's why he's there for the interception.
How he spaces routes is something that he just does so well, and it's something that you value, I value. We talk about it a lot come draft season when we're evaluating linebackers and corners and safeties. And again, it's all in relation to the actual routes and the concepts that are happening, but also in relation to down and distance. And again, another third down here. The way he just slow plays this and puts himself in position to make a play coming forward, to make a play gaining depth and make the interception here like he actually does. Like, he just doesn't put himself in a spot where he's going to be caught out one way or the other. And he allows the onus to be put onto the offense. And in this case, the onus to be put on Sam Howell to make a really good throw and be able to get it over him and in front of the safety. Howell's not able to do it. And then we see a really nice athletic play, even with his little baby arms. He's able to go up and sky for the football and get that interception.
And this is just a variation of cover 3. Here, your deep third defenders right here. Poyer spinning to the post. Hyde is kind of dropping down into the hole here. Here, your flats defenders going out there. So it's a variation of cover 3. You're having a little kind of like a poach going on where Hyde is kind of watching that deep over route or that clearing route. But he is taken out of the play. But again, just Bernard just senses it so well and understands that there is going to be some room behind him, especially because, again, it is more of a cover 3 type look. And this dagger concept is usually money because you're getting that clearing route and you're having that dagger and that deep in breaking route come in behind that second level. But once again, Bernard senses it beautifully, gains depth. And as soon as a quarterback, is really releasing, he gains that depth, flips those hips, and he goes up and gets the ball for the interception on third down as the Commanders were driving on this play. Once again, everything kind of goes into this play. Look at the communication between the second and third level. The pre, post picture changes. They spin to a different coverage. It's third down. He baits the quarterback. And just there's so much going on in this play, and it's just so good to see Bernard, come away with the interception on that. It's really just that play really encompassed his play last year and how we put it all together.
Yeah, and to tie back to one of the points we spoke about with him with like the turnovers and that, just being in the right place at the right time and always around the football, and just a play like that, you see that. And at first, because that was early on in the season, and you could say like, oh, he happened to be in the right place at the right time at the right spot, cool, good for him. And then you see the way he played throughout the rest of the season. And it's just like, no, that's not right place at the right time. He puts himself in those positions. He understands what is going on around him, and he puts himself in a spot to recover a fumble or get a PBU or get an interception or make a quarterback have to put a little more touch on a throw because he's in the passing lane or he's in the window and he's causing some sort of hurdle or obstacle for the quarterback to make that completion. Just he knows where to position himself in coverage and against the run as well. And again, so much of it is, I hate to keep drilling down in this one spot, but just that high football IQ and his processing and his football intelligence, everything that was spoken highly of him from Dave Aranda and coming from Baylor, and just seeing where he is now and what he's able to do. It's not by accident. Like, he puts himself in those situations, and there's so many plays that he doesn't make, but he influences because of his positioning. Again, that the one I talked about against Dallas with the play on CD Lamb running the post against Tampa 2. It's a great play by Poyer, and it's all about Poyer, but that throw happens, that trajectory happens because of Bernard's path as that pole runner underneath Lamb, and Dak puts that trajectory on the ball because of the presence of Bernard. And so there's all those plays, kind of like how we used to talk about Tremaine Edmonds, that some other guys will make because Bernard puts himself in the right position. But what you also get with Bernard is not just being, a force multiplier, but also being a guy who actually makes those plays, both in terms of versus the run and in coverage from a splash perspective. And only seeing him do it in his second year. And again, that second year being really his first full year as a starter, because the only game experience he really had was the one game against the Jets as a rookie. It's exciting to see how, he was kind of thrown into the fire right from the jump and was able to succeed. And then Milano goes down and he was able to kind of push his game further. And now we get the opportunity to see what this defense looks like, hopefully when they're healthy. And we get to see, year 3 from Terrel Bernard and what he can be both on and off the field, as we've talked about, what this team needs to fill from an on the field perspective, but also from an off the field leadership perspective, as they kind of go through a lot of change with that as well.
Yeah, we started off the show, talking about Milano, him working back from the injury, and I am excited to see both of these guys play alongside each other because they're so similar in so many different ways. They create the splash plays that the defense needs. They're playmakers, as we put in the headline for this. And so to see them side by side, healthy, at some point this year, at some point this offseason, I'm excited for it because it'll allow the Bills to do so much more than what they could do with Dotson in the lineup and Bernard shining. So to have both of those guys, two very similar players playing on the field next to each other, like we saw the first few games, I do expect them to continue, making those plays and being the chaos creators for the Bills defense next year, whether you're talking as rushers, whether they're sending an extra man or adding a guy on like a linebacker, like Bernard or Milano, or running those simulated and creeper pressures where they're sending a linebacker, dropping a defensive lineman out. They are chess pieces. They are playmakers. And that is what this league is about. Blitzing a lot is not, it's not a good thing to do when you have the type of elite quarterback play, like you mentioned, at the top with some of the AFC guys in the AFC. So having guys that are multidimensional at that linebacker position really helps the defensive coordinator in this scheme, in this one gap attack oriented scheme of the Buffalo Bills.
And I really look to the second level of the Bills defense as the strength of this team with Taron Johnson, Terrel Bernard, and Matt Milano. You've got new pieces in the secondary. You're going to have 2 new starting safeties this year, depending on if Rapp gets one of the starting spots and depending on how you viewed him last year. But, you're going to have some new safety combination versus years past. You're going to have Benford and Douglas. There's questions about the edge grouping from a top tier perspective, from a pass rush perspective. You've got some new faces on the interior of the defensive line behind Daquan and Ed Oliver. And then you look to that second level, and like you said, you've got chaos creation there with Bernard and Milano and Taron. But you've also got dudes who finish and who make plays on the ball in Bernard and Milano and Taron. And I really look for them to be the glue for this defense, not just in terms of connecting the back end, with the front, but just overall being the glue for how this defense operates. We've shown it on this show, the communication from Taron Johnson from an in-practice standpoint, which we talked about last year, I think during minicamp or OTAs, and then showing it in-game. the communication that comes from Terran and Bernard and Milano combined with their play, I look for them to really be like the most important aspect of this defense because of their play styles, their intelligence, what they can do mentally and physically. And it's a bump to Bernard in this year to be able to play in between Terran Johnson and Matt Milano. It's a bump to Milano to have kind of a mini clone version of Milano playing
Yeah.
next to him in Terrel Bernard, and then Terran Johnson, who's just a velociraptor running around and doing anything and everything. It's a really fun aspect of this defense, and I'm excited to see where they lean with the change in safeties,
Hmm.
what type of different coverages they employ, how much more man coverage we see. Do they continue what they did last year in the beginning of the season, like we talked about with those creepers and those sims and the 5-man pressures and the 6-man stuff and,
Right.
running cover one peel blitzes and all these different things that they can kind of really get into their bag? Because I do think they're going to have to scheme up pressure given the lack of, clear cut pass rushing talent off the edge, depending on how AJ Epinesa ascends and what Groot looks like this year. And yeah, they just give the Bills defense so many possibilities because of how good they are at the second level.
Right. No, I'm excited, man. It's nice to see him back, Milano back on the field. Bernard as well, obviously, with the injury late.
Yeah.
So again, it'll be fun to see those two play together more than just a few games in a new scheme. I mean,
Mm.
again, based on the new coordinator and Bobby Babich, and regardless who calls the plays, there's gonna be some new wrinkles, and that is because of some of the versatility that Milano and Bernard have.
I like them, Bernard, one last little piece on mini camp. Bernard talking today about Bobby Babich, and despite all the different questions he was asked, the thing that he kept coming back to was just like the excellence that Bobby Babich demands of you and the high standard that he holds everyone to. And I'm excited to see, kind of, how that surfaces on the field, regardless, like you said, of whether he's calling plays or not. I think that impact will be felt in some way, shape, or form. So we're going to get new wrinkles and layers to this defense, just like we'll get new wrinkles and layers to the offense as well. It's going to be a really fun year, whether they're good or bad. It's going to be a fun year for guys like us because there's going to be a lot of schematic differences on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. And then pairing that with, kind of the individual player evaluations is going to be a nice piece as well. I saw the smirk on your face and I knew something was coming. So feel free to take the floor.
So this is 2022, 2023, only the linebacker position, regular season and playoffs. 7 takeaways, top of the list, Matt Milano over the last 2 years. Terrel Bernard, number 4 on that list with 7
Oh,
as
look
well.
at Tremaine Edmonds.
Look at Tremaine. Get some Tremaine. But also opponent QB rating 52.7 when they target
Oh,
Matt Milano. Yards per snap 0.92. They're not even getting a
mm,
yard when they're throwing at him. 14 passes defensed by Matt Milano over the last 2 years. And you see even Bernard, he had 7 this year. So he's on again. They're very similar players. Look at Tremaine. What up, Tremaine? 19 over the last 2 years. So again, it's gonna be cool to watch these guys develop. They take the ball away, they make tackles for losses. They can match up in the pass game whether you're playing zone or man. Like there's a lot that these guys can do. So I just want to throw that out there. And it's kind of interesting to see Tremaine up there, but I think we're digressing a little bit.
I also
Let's
think it's
leave it
nuts
at
too
that.
to see TJ Watt show up there, even though he's mainly a pass rush dude, but he just makes
Oh
plays
yeah, he
everywhere,
just makes
even when
plays.
they drop him into coverage. Like it's just what I don't know what's in like the family bloodstream with the Watts. Like they're just between, TJ and JJ and then even Derek who made it to the NFL. Like they just nuts to see what kind of athlete TJ Watt is and what he can do in coverage in addition to being a rusher.
Mhm.
Anything else, Eric, as we wind down here? Terrell
I
Bernard,
got
mini
another
camp.
stat on Milano. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'll just stop. I'll stop now. No, it was a good show. I love studying linebackers. I love talking linebackers. We appreciate everyone in the chat room talking linebackers. And if you love talking football, if you love talking analytics, you love talking, food, like anything, become an insider. We have some cool enhancements coming up for our insiders. We always talk about Cover One having a community and our Slack channel. We got some cool enhancements coming up. If you're an insider, you're kind of privy to the knowledge already. But if you're not, join, become an insider. $60 for the year. Get a free T-shirt, a sticker, and again, behind the scenes content, access, all the good nuggets from us. And so we couldn't do any of this show, any of the stuff on the network without you guys, without our insiders and support. So while we do appreciate everyone joining us in the chat room, if you do have the ability to help this, our small independent, blog brand, we would appreciate if you became an insider and joined us in our community. Our Cover One community is what we'll call it for now.
I like Jay Will coming back and saying Cover One is the best. Thank you guys.
Ah,
Don't hate me.
no hard feelings, man.
Never hard feelings.
I'm telling you, we love this. We love this. And that's why, Jay Will, that's why you should become an insider if you're not one already. Become an insider and talk football with us all day, man. We'll bring it.
I honestly like when there's differing opinions, whether it's in the chat or like on the show. Even when I had Bruce on last night, we were doing superlatives. We had a different answer for every single question, which was like fun. It's good to see that level of functional football intelligence type of conversation, even if there are disagreements. So no hard feelings ever.
I'll be sure to do like a 30-minute Matt Milano video though, just to kind of back our points of view. But
you're more like
that may be coming now,
like a 3-hour and 30-minute Matt Milano video to kind of back that up.
Silas, real quick before we leave, we did a Mike Edwards video. We checked that out. We did a film room. And I think we did also. I did a video
on film room feature, and we did a pure film room episode on him.
And Rasul would be a dope episode, to be honest. That might have to come.
We could do
pretty soon.
We could do a Rasul because Christian Benford is really overlooked. We might have to do a starting corner episode of Rasul and Christian Benford.
Yeah. That's a lot of film though, because they had really strong years. But no, I like that idea, Silas. We'll put that in the itinerary for sure. We got a long off season still, so we like doing these kind of like, in focus, in depth, cuts on individual players. So definitely take a look at Rasul and maybe even Benford, like Anthony said.
Yeah. And again, for anybody in the chat or anybody watching now, post live, if you have anything in the comments, like Erik said, like this is the downtime of year. So we come up with ideas, but if there's something that you folks want to see us cover, whether it's a player, whether it's something schematic, anything and everything you got, put it up into the chat, put it up into the comments on YouTube, tweet at us on Twitter, get at us on whatever social you're on. If you are a Cover One insider, get at us in the Slack channel, and start to, throw anything you want our way. Cause we are, like Erik said, we're open to any ideas with this time of year. And we like to get into whatever you folks want us to cover. And again, like Erik said, we wouldn't be here without you folks. So your wishes are commands. So anything you got, throw it at us and we'll try and make that happen. Thank you very much to everybody who joined us live on this episode of the Cover One Film Room. We greatly appreciate it. Before you leave here, if you're watching live, please, and thank you, drop a like on this video. Likes are the lifeblood of these streams. So please, if you have not already, drop a like on this video. Even if you're watching later and you're not watching live, if you have not already and you're willing and able, please drop a like on this video. If you are listening to this show on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's cool too. Please rate and review and subscribe to the Cover One Film Room on whatever audio platform you're listening to this show on. Turn on notifications for the Cover One Film Room YouTube playlist. Subscribe to the Cover One YouTube channel. We have you covered pretty much every single day of the week with varying levels of content, all related to the Bills and football and X's and O's, whatever your, poison is. We got you covered here at Cover One. And again, to kind of drill home, the Bills are going through a revamp, but so are we at Cover One with some of our insiders. And a lot of the feedback has been really positive in terms of the direction that we're moving in with some of our content and some of our platform stuff. And a lot of it is message. And a lot of that comes directly from our insiders and surveys that are sent out and asking people kind of what they want and things that we could do to improve. So there's a lot of fun stuff on the horizon for the Bills and for us on the Cover One brand as a whole. But until the next time we see you folks in the Cover One Film Room, that'll do it for us here in this episode of the Film Room. For myself, Anthony Prohaska, for Mr. Erik Turner, that'll do it for us here. If you're living in the Western New York area, go outside, touch some grass. It is beautiful outside. I have to go get some groceries, and I may stop at Anderson's and get some custard. Wow,
you gotta do that every time.
I did it just
you did
for
it on air this time, right? You didn't do it after. I see how it is, man.
Just wanted to put you on notice right here. That's right. Just I'm a simple guy. Hot fudge sundae, some rainbow sprinkles, no whipped cream. That's it. Just that's what I'm about to go do. That's fair. Good. Maybe, and like last time, maybe I'll go for a run. So that way I feel like I earned it and kind of burn off the calories before I put more on.
Fair.
Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night, folks. If you need anything at us, get at us on Twitter. Erik on the main Cover One handle at Cover One, or his personal at Erik J. Turner. Myself at pro__Ant. That'll do it for us here in this episode. Let us know in the comments or Twitter or wherever if there's stuff you want us to cover. We'll see you next week. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. Godspeed. And as always, go Bills.